Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Murray DL, and I'm the Dean of the Merrick School, and really pleased that you could join us tonight. I know a lot of you, and particularly students are here, know quite a bit about the Merrick School. But I mean, in essence, what we stand for is that we launch professional and entrepreneurial careers, and we do that by sort of really offering education that's really practical, we like to think, and applied. So that's that's our that really is our keynote. And what better industry to sort of launch professional and entrepreneurial careers than in real estate, right? And so they are we have the only undergraduate program in real estate. It's been going since 2006. We have a variety of specializations, even ability for students who have started off in construction management to transfer into this program and finish up in real estate. And our students aim for careers that a lot of the people who represent the industry are in: development, mortgage markets, commercial lending, banking, economic development, land use planning. So lessons from legends, and this is kind of why we're here tonight. We've got a kind of wonderful mix of students and faculty, alumni, business community. And we really run these annually to celebrate a prominent industry legend. And tonight we're really privileged to have Dick Lombardo here, who's a CEO of Harkins Builders. And you're going to get to know a lot more about Dick in this event, but I can't think of a more appropriate person for us to learn from. As you'll learn from Dick, he's got a huge passion for people and people development, so it's really appropriate that he's joining us tonight. Each of these lessons from legends provides an excellent forum to learn from Baltimore's prominent, influential, successful business leaders. So there's some thank yous to start this. Events like this are made possible only really through sponsorship support. And your support really helps the real estate and economic development program fund students and their experiences throughout the year. We do a variety of things with students throughout the year in this program. We do development site tours, we do career development seminars, we work with the students in marketing also to prospective students. I want to particularly thank our real estate and economic development advisory board members who are here. They've spent a lot of time in planning this event. They spent a lot of discretionary time just doing program advocacy for us and providing their expertise. So I really appreciate your work. And so I'm going to turn this event over now to Seema Iyer, who is the Associate Director of the Jacob France Institute, and she's also a Research Assistant Professor in the Department of Finance and Economics, and she's a co-director of the real estate program. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean DL. So good evening. My name is Seema Iyer, and it is my honor and privilege to serve as program director for the bachelor's degree in real estate and economic development here. As the dean said, the only bachelor's degree in Maryland designed to prepare graduates in real estate and economic development. We have, I'm going to cut this so that we can bring our guests up. We have over 40 matriculating students in the READ program here at UB. Can I see a show of hands of READ students in the audience? Thank you for being here. Other UB students that are in the audience besides READ students, raise hands. Lessons from Legends event is designed to inspire our students on the possibilities in the field of real estate by hearing from prominent local officials who discuss firsthand what it takes to succeed. There are, of course, many people to thank for pulling this year's Lessons from Legends in Real Estate, but first let me thank our honoree, Dick Lombardo, if you want to join us here on the stage, for being here this evening. Obviously, without you, there would be no program. And thank you, Rick Kohr, for serving as our MC this evening. They're here because of the generous support of all the sponsors in this year's Lessons from Legends. I am about to read a very long list, which is testimony really to you, Dick, on how many people wanted to support you being honored this year. So thank you to Harkins Builders, Hord Copland Mocht, who Monica could not be here today, she's on our board, but they designed the program and the poster that's outside. Jones Lang LaSalle, M&T Bank, Colonial Electric Company, Gordon Feinblatt, the Franey Company, Charles Klein Sons, the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation, Enterprise Community Partners, Atapco Properties, Continental Realty, and Alex Brown Realty. That's a very long list, and we are very grateful for that being here this year. I'd like to thank some key individuals who worked particularly tirelessly to make this event happen. Dave Blazis from Atapco, who actually got us started on this year's honoree, serves on our REIT advisory board. Tashi Jelani is our assistant in the real estate program, who literally did everything that you saw outside, which is fantastic. Lisa Dawson and Steve Rubin from Harkins for, I don't know how many emails you got from us, but thank you for responding to all of them. Christina Hardy here from the Dean's office, and our students who helped set up this evening, Cynthia Green, Mike Culp, Judith Nayoff, and Brandon Ferreira, who volunteered their time to prepare for the event. I'd like to acknowledge, in particular, REIT's advisory board chair, Bob Adikovic is here, who is also president of MCCEI, and executive residents here at UB to spearhead one particular strategic goal for our board, which is to mentor current UB students by connecting them to formal internships and informal mentorships so that our students can apply classroom knowledge to real work experience. After this event, if he hasn't called you already, you'll know why he's calling you, either if you're a student or in the industry, to make those connections here between you and students here at UB. I'd also like to introduce you to the REIT board. If you can raise your hand if you're on the REIT advisory board. Thank you very much for all of your help. We affectionately refer to them as the doers. They do not come to our meetings with shy, let's put it that way, and they not only are passionate about what we're trying to do here, but they're also passionate in trying to get stuff done. They show a real commitment to nurturing Baltimore's future leaders in real estate and economic development. So we have set ourselves clear goals in addition to the one that I mentioned about mentoring students. So let me mention the 4 additional things that we're charged with. Raise awareness of the program as a resource to the Baltimore area industry firms and professionals, and your being here is one example of how we're trying to raise that awareness. The READ program is a relatively young program and aims to grow to 25 students enrolled per year. So if you know somebody who's interested in a program like this, please come see any one of us that's here. We need to ensure timely graduation. Whether students are full-time or part-time, our goal is to identify and overcome any barriers that face our students in timely completion to their degree. And our board members are there watching our students trying to finish in any kind of barriers that come up. And last but not least, our board helps us make sure that the curriculum is aligned to meet industry needs. We develop our curriculum in collaboration with our board members so that students truly have the skills needed to hit the ground running when they try and take some of the jobs that you have to offer. So without any further ado, let me introduce our distinguished guests this evening. Dick Lombardo is chairman and CEO of employee-owned Harkins Builders, Incorporated, one of the top multifamily and commercial construction management companies in the Mid-Atlantic, generating annually revenues of $250 million, having built over 800 projects during its 50-year history. Dick began his career as an estimator at the same time as Harkins began as a company in 1976. He went on to earn his M.B.A. in finance in 1978 from Loyola College and continuously works his way up to becoming Harkins' chief executive in 2007. He led Harkins through the challenges of our recent Great Recession, and subsequently during the company's transition to a 100% employee-owned company. Today, he is chairman and director of Harkins Builders, Incorporated, which he just assumed in 2016. Dick will be interviewed by Rick Kohr, who is founding member and CEO of Evergreen Advisors, LLC. Rick has known Dick for more than 20 years and was instrumental in conversion of Harkins to the employee-owned structure that it is today. Thank you both for joining us on what I'm sure will be an enlightening evening, and please join me in welcoming Dick Lombardo and Rick Kohr.
Well, Dick, it's an honor to be here. Dick was asked me to help moderate tonight, to be the interviewer, and I was stunned to be asked. So it's an honor to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. So I started thinking through, known Dick for 20 years, how did he get this honor? And I had first thought I'd maybe look up what the term legend was. Thought a definition might be helpful. And I went into the dictionary, and the first definition was a story from the past that is believed by many people but cannot prove to be true. So I thought Paul Bunyan, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and then I went and looked at this great honor, and we've seen David Cordish, Jay Brody, and Ed St. John, Tom Bizzuto, Gino Gemignani. I was told that's how you pronounce it, and I'm thinking, okay, that can't be the right definition. Second definition is a famous or important person who's known for doing something extremely well, and over 20 years, that's a perfect definition. So it's an honor.
Well, thank you, Rick. I have to say that when I was first approached, and I think Steve Rubin first approached me about this, my initial reaction was, no, this is about legends. So you must be looking for someone else. But thank you, Rick. And I have to say that I couldn't think of anyone better to sit, be on the stage here and to converse. Not only have you and I known each other for 20 years and had a lot of great experiences together, but Rick has truly been an integral consultant to our company, involved, as Seema said, involved in our transition from private ownership to employee ownership, and every step along the way, and continues to consult with us on our financial and employee stock issues. So Rick knows our company as well as anyone.
And it's a privilege to work with Harkins. So the format tonight, we'll probably spend 25, 30 minutes asking some questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So if you have some questions that you think are of interest, we'll have time at the end to ask Dick those questions. These, though, I kind of scripted, so we'll see where that goes. So Dick, as you heard, graduated from Loyola in 1970, joined Harkins in 1976. And I think one of the first questions when we sat down and talked was, why this industry? What drew you into Harkins and the construction space, and obviously started this wonderful career?
Well, it wasn't. I didn't know, when I was going through school, I didn't know that this was going to be my industry. But I did work in construction a couple of summers while I was attending Loyola College. And after I graduated, there were not a lot of other opportunities. So I went back to work in construction, and I worked on an apartment project in Annapolis. And within a couple of years, another fellow and I started a small general contracting company. And we did pretty well until 1975. And in 75, there was a pretty severe, pretty sharp real estate recession. And so we ran out of work, and then I ran out of money. And I had two little boys to buy food for, and I didn't have the money to do it. And fortunately, at about that time, I got an introduction to Harkins and interviewed and started with Harkins. And that was a very fortunate, at the time it was fortunate, and certainly over a long period of time, it's been a great good fortune for me.
Yeah, and it's incredible to see how it's evolved over those last 40 years or so since you joined the firm, and now just celebrated the 50th anniversary. You step into Harkins early on in industry, maybe you didn't know a lot about other than some construction. Who were the biggest influencers in your career early on in that process?
Certainly Tom Harkins was the biggest influence on me early in my career. Mr. Harkins was a man of wisdom and integrity, foresight, someone that our clients just trusted innately. And so, you know, when I think of giants and legends, I think of Tom Harkins. To me, he was a giant and a legend, and someone who with whom I interacted directly in some situations and had a significant effect on me. And there's a little story a little bit later we can talk about that.
Absolutely, it's a good story. So it's Mr. Harkins and then Blaise Cook.
For those of you who may not know, Harkins was founded in 1965 by Tom Harkins. And in 1969, Blaise Cook joined the company as a laborer. Mr. Harkins passed away in 1993, and Blaise had already become president, and he purchased at that point he owned a piece of the company, and he purchased the balance of the stock from the Harkins estate. And so then Blaise Cook became CEO and owned the company until he passed away, well, until 2001 when he sold a majority interest to the employees, and then Blaise passed away in 2007. But Blaise was a huge leader in the industry and in the community, and someone whose shoes I thought, wow, I'm not sure how I'm going to fill those shoes. And it's one of those things where I decided that wasn't, don't worry about that, just do the best job you can do.
And Blaise was a University of Baltimore graduate.
Yes, he was.
I'm not sure what year, but...
Blaise went to night school to get his degree and got it from University of Baltimore. One other person that I'd like to mention who was a big influence on me early and throughout my career is Theo Rogers. Theo is a principal in the A&R development company based here in Baltimore, and someone with whom Harkins has joint ventured many projects and for whom we have built many projects with Theo as our client. And he's just one of these, another man whose integrity and wisdom is renowned.
We'll touch on that one a little bit later. So 50 years, 3 presidents. We'll talk a little bit about culture as well. You become the head of the company, but tell me what happened in 1978. Things almost didn't pan out in 1978, did they?
Well, no, they almost didn't, but fortunately I could rely on Mr. Harkins' wisdom. In 1978, the company went through a bit of a rough patch. We had been approached by our surety to take over 7 projects for another company who was going under. So we agreed to do so, and it was a mistake. We didn't have the manpower. We didn't know the manpower that we were bringing on from the other company. And we finished all of the projects, every last one of them, but it was a pretty significant financial hit to us. And so once we finished the last project, our surety dropped us. Like, okay. At that time, I was working in estimating and pre-construction and business development. And Mr. Harkins said that until we could resolve our surety issues, but also until we could get our financial house in order, we were not to pursue any more work. We were going to get everything cleaned up, get our financial house in order, and until that time, we weren't to pursue any more work. Well, of course, that was what I did. And so I even tried to convince him to to bid a project in Columbia, and Mr. Harkins listened to my entire presentation, asked me a couple of pointed questions, and when I was all complete, he sat there, and he sat there, and then he asked me, he said, "Was I not clear that we weren't bidding anything?" So I was pretty frustrated because I didn't have anything to do, and so I wrote my letter of resignation, and I took handwritten letter of resignation, and I took it in to Mr. Harkins, and you had to know Mr. Harkins, but he was just one of these people who was never in a hurry to say something. He would listen and listen and listen, and so he reads my letter, and he sits there, and he sits there, and finally he looks up at me and he says, "No." And which I thought was kind of a strange response. I thought that was my decision, you know. And but he convinced me that the issues that we were facing were short term, and that I had great opportunities long term with the company. And so he refused to accept my resignation, and it was wonderful for me that he did.
Absolutely. I can't think of another story I've heard like that where the boss says, no, you can't quit, you can't resign. And obviously he saw something in the future that, you know, you didn't see at that point maybe.
Well, I suppose so.
So you're 78, the resignation letter goes back in the file. You proceed the career for roughly another decade at Harkins. And then you had another itch you had to go pursue.
Well, and in this case, this was just a career opportunity where I had the opportunity to go to work for a builder developer who had offered me what seemed to me to be an obscene amount of money, and with a young family, it just seemed, and it was local and there was percentages involved. It seemed like an opportunity that I really couldn't pass up, given the potential, which seemed the financial potential of it. And so I provided my 2 weeks notice, and Mr. Harkins was away. He got back the second week and asked me to come see him. And I explained to him the situation, and that I had made this decision having nothing to do with Harkins. I loved every minute that I had been at Harkins. I would, you know, it was never about that I was not happy at Harkins. It was just that this financial opportunity was too great. And Mr. Harkins did another pretty wise thing. He said, "Okay." And he didn't try to negotiate with me. He just said, "Okay." He said, "You know, it's always nice to have options." "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I just want you to know that if you should decide at any time that this new opportunity is not exactly what you want, you don't need to call. You don't need to do anything other than walk back in the door, sit back down at your desk, and start working again. Your desk will be here waiting for you if you should ever decide to come back." Well, I was, as you can imagine, I was pretty blown away by that. And of course, as it turned out, my new employer and I didn't quite get along. And Mr. Harkins he had some knowledge of this person, and he had a little insight that he didn't quite let me in on. So within 6 months, I was back at my desk at Harkins, and happy to be there, and knowing that it's not always about money. It's truly not always about money.
But it's interesting, the twists and turns that you see companies take, the twists and turns in your career, and how things can, the end product. It's interesting how it's formulated.
If I could tell one more short story that's related to Mr. Harkins and his wisdom, this time really, I think. About a year or so after I came back to work for Harkins, we had an opportunity to develop a 600-unit apartment project for the Navy. It was a design-build competition with a 20-year lease agreement attached to it. It was what was called the 801 program. And I had approached Mr. Harkins about doing it, and he said, "Yes, go ahead." And we won this contract with the Navy, and I was in the process of lining up the financing and working with the county on permits and getting the design done. And one night I was working late, and I ran my numbers again. I kind of did that a lot. Just, you're always kind of checking your numbers and
This before Lotus and spreadsheets, and these are
yeah, this is
handwritten.
This is pretty much punched, one of those old punched out machines, and this night my numbers didn't add up. And I thought, that's really odd. So I went back through them again, and they still didn't add up. And unfortunately, they didn't add up to the tune of $1 million in the wrong direction. So I couldn't figure out. So wow, this is. So the first thing the next morning, I called Blaze Cook. I called Dave Wasser, who was our CFO, and Mr. Harkins. Said, I really need to meet with you. And we had an attorney that we were working with by the name of Ken Laurie, and Ken joined us. So we sat down in the meeting, and I presented I said, I've made a mistake in my calculation of the property tax formula, and I can't figure. I just think I've made a mistake, and it's $1 million difference. And David Wasser, who's the CFO, said, yeah, I've checked Dick's numbers, and he's right. He was wrong. and Ken Laurie, who's the attorney, said, well, I've checked with the county, and this is the correct application of the tax formula, the rate, and it is what it is. And Mr. Harkins said, what's next? I never heard one word from Mr. Harkins about losing $1 million. He just said, what's next? What's next? Where are we going next? And Ken Laurie, who was the attorney, said to me afterwards in the men's room, wow, that's a first for me. I don't think I've ever been with anybody who lost $1 million and kept their job.
Now, I did hear, though, that he was going back to look for that original resignation letter.
I had that well hidden.
Yeah. So, interesting segue in a moment, but I think what's interesting about Harkins, we're fortunate we get to work with, dozens and dozens of companies on an annual basis, and what's always been interesting to me, there's a rare occasion, I could probably on less than one hand, or you can walk into a company and the culture's palpable, and you can sense this company, it works well together, they're good at what they do, and I think that's a credit to what I've seen over the years. I didn't know Mr. Harkins, but knew Blaze well very early on. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and what Blaze and Mr. Harkins built and Dick's continued to emulate and cultivate there, I think it's pretty remarkable. I have to say that because you probably won't be able to say that yourself, but it's remarkable, and it's proven itself in terms of how the company gives back to the community and the success of the ESOP. It's just been a remarkable story and continues to be a remarkable story. And I think when I think about a legend, that's one of the things we'll finish the conversation with is how have you been able to continue that culture that was developed and done a great job of building on that and keeping the momentum and some pretty bad recession, the Great Recession, as you pointed out earlier. It's been an incredible story. So we talked a little bit about the influencers on the front end, Mr. Harkins, Thomas B. Harkins, and Blaze Cook, and if you knew Blaze, bigger than life personality in a lot of great ways. Today, who are the bigger influences, going back now last 5 or 10 years, how have they impacted you?
I'll tell you what's interesting. If we want to stay within the last 5 years, one of the people who's had a great deal of influence on me, but on the company as well, is Gib Mason. I don't know how many of you know Gib Mason. Gib runs the corporate, and I shouldn't mention competition, but he runs corporate development, corporate training at UMBC. And we've been working with them for about the last 4 years on different programs clearly designed to help Harkins become a better company in different ways. And it's been very impactful for the company, very, very beneficial.
Excellent. So if I'm a student here tonight, what are some of the guideposts you might give them in terms of getting into this career, and how do you develop, and and things that might make them more successful early on from that standpoint?
Well, if you know, I usually think of students as younger people, so forgive me if I am mischaracterizing that. For people who are starting out in a career, and this could apply perhaps to any career, but probably my biggest piece of advice would be ask the dumb question. And then ask another dumb question and another. In my experience in construction, especially as a young person, we're put into management roles responsible to manage people mostly older than us, and all of whom know so much more about what they do than we do. Whether it's the electrician or the bricklayer or the concrete guy or the carpenter, they've done it a bunch, and here's this young person coming in to sort of manage it. And so what I always found was that the way to work best with those people was to ask, how do you do that? Why are you doing that? What's the best way to do this? And oftentimes that, you know, you'd think, well, I should know that. But no one ever cared about that. They were happy to expound, and I found that not only did I learn that way, but I also found that people appreciated being asked. That it was a sign of respect for them and for their knowledge and their expertise. And so that would be my first piece of advice. Ask the dumb questions. Don't ever be embarrassed that you think, you know, I should know this. It's going to be embarrassing for me to ask this and admit that I don't know it. Get over it. Ask the questions and ask them and ask them.
Yep. We call that intellectual curiosity in my house. You know, nothing wrong with that. So your career has developed, great successful track record at Harkins, Gib Mason, other folks that you look at from an influencing standpoint. How about books? Do you have a book or two that you're reading right now, more recently, that's had an impact on your thinking and how you run the company?
Not at the moment, but there are 3 books that have had an influence on me and on the company. The first book was a book called Top Grading. Is anybody familiar with the Top Grading book? Written by Brad Smart. Brad Smart was chief of HR for GE when Jack Welch was running GE. And Brad Smart came up with this top grading theory, and the theory is essentially that if you take almost any organization, any company at random, and you plot all of their employees on a graph, you know, you get a bell-shaped curve, and essentially what you get is about 10 or 15 or maybe 20% at the most are A players. And then some 40 or more percent or 50% are B players, and then the remainder are C players. And so his theory was, we'll get rid of the C players and you're automatically a better team. And the theory makes a lot of sense when you don't think of it in such stark terms. When you think of it in terms of, well, how do we change C players to B players? How do we change B players to A players? You know, how do we do a better job of hiring A players? You know, it's very much, you know, like you see sports teams do. You know, they're always trying to upgrade their talent, and essentially that was the theory behind the Top Grading book, and it had a lot of methodology to it, but it was just an approach, and we took it pretty seriously, and we started evaluating all of our employees, and are they in the right spot? This person might be a C player doing this, move them over here, and all of a sudden, boy, they're really great at that. They're an A player in this position. And so That had a significant, over a long period of time, over a 8-10 year period of time, had a significant benefit for us. The other book that I really like, I encourage everybody to read, is Good to Great. To me, the essence of Good to Great is if you get the right people on the bus, you can go anywhere you want to go. And so that kind of fit in with the top grading. And then a few years ago, I read a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Advantage. And The Advantage is about organizational health. And sort of the premise of The Advantage is that there are a lot of construction companies, just to use our industry, and they're all competent. Nearly all of them are competent. You could count on them to be able to build this stage or build this building, and they'd probably get it done. So what differentiates companies that you really want to do business with, where the employees really want to be there, they really like the culture, they are engaged, and they're challenged, and it's exciting. Well, it's what he calls organizational health. And organizational health revolves around things like good communication and transparency and healthy conflict. And so when I read this book, it just kind of resonated with me that at the top of the Harkins organization, we could benefit from a little dose of this Advantage book. And so we actually took that book, we put it into a training program for the executives to help us improve the clarity and the consistency of our communication, building trust within our leadership group and between the leadership group and outside, everyone else in the company, and so that we could have healthy conflict, open dialogue. No one's, anyone can say anything they want, and they do. So those 3 books have been significant for me and for our company.
It's interesting you mentioned that. You talk about your team and relationships, and I've watched you over the years. Relationships are really incredibly important to you. How do you go about developing those relationships, maybe even thinking outside the company, and why are they so important?
Well, economically, they're cheaper. Well, I don't mean to be flip about it. Harkins has, from the day I walked in the door, they've always been a company built around long-term relationships and negotiated contracts. We rarely bid hard bidding, and most of our work is negotiated, and I think in large part because of our ability, one, to work on the front end with our clients, and to be reliable in terms of, well, what should the cost of this project be? And not only what should the cost of it be, but how do we maximize the value that we get for this budget? And how do we maintain that through changing markets and the long times that it sometimes takes, and the twists and turns that the development road, Dave, sometimes take. How do we stay and control those costs? But I think in the end, the relationships, they value what we bring, but they value the reliability, they value our integrity, they value the fact that we work with our clients sort of on a long-term basis. We don't think, how do I make an extra nickel today? We think, how do I develop this relationship so that it will produce over a long period of time? And so when I flippantly said, because they're cheaper, it's just, it's to me, it's a wise way to do business, and it's so much easier in terms of it's great. It's so much better to work with people than to be in some sort of confrontation or conflict. And so that's one of the reasons why we pursue we approach business the way we do, and we don't try to be in the competitive hard bid world, because a lot of times that world is confrontational. It's about whose nickel is it? Well, that's just not the business we wanted to be in. We wanted to be in the business of, hey, this is all of our nickels, and let's see how we go about maximizing those nickels for everyone over a long period of time.
Can you touch on the story? Maybe you can mention the names, maybe you can't, the contract that you and I discussed when it comes down to the relationships?
With Theo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I thought this was a great story.
I use this story to, Kathy Hum, who's our director of HR, is here, and Kathy runs our new employee orientations, and oftentimes I'll use this story to try to communicate the focus on relationships that we have, and on trust, and how important that is. So I mentioned that Theo Rogers was someone who had a great influence on me early on. And in 1978, when we were struggling with our finances, we had already committed to do a project for A&R, but when we couldn't get the bond, A&R put up a letter of credit for us. Now, that was about 6 steps above my pay grade at that time, so I wasn't aware of that. But I was responsible at that point in time for negotiating the construction contract. And Theo was the person with whom I was negotiating it. Well, this was our first encounter with one another, and to put it mildly, we didn't exactly get along real well. And we were going toe-to-toe over this contract. And it was a HUD project, and we were at the Baltimore HUD office at the closing table. It was at 10 o'clock at night when we finally agreed on all the terms and signed the construction contract. So that was the beginning of my relationship with Theo Rogers. 17 years later, and many projects together later, the Housing Authority in Baltimore put out an RFP for the first Hope 6 project, which is the redevelopment of the public housing in Baltimore. And Lafayette Courts was the name of a group of high-rise buildings that had been imploded. And so the Housing Authority put out this RFP to have a builder-developer come in and redevelop this entire area and create a new neighborhood. So Theo and I got together and we said, well, look, why don't we, we've joint ventured on some other things, why don't we go after this? And so we put together a team of architects and engineers and consultants, and we put together a proposal, and we won this contract. It was a $52 million contract with the Housing Authority. Fortunately, the project went extremely well, and we built it in a short amount of time, and fortunately, Theo and Harkins did well financially. And about 6 months after we had completed the project and had, of course, been paid in full, I got a phone call from Theo telling me he had a problem, and his problem was that his accountant couldn't do his tax returns.
It's appropriate, given the day.
And so I was a little bit uncertain as to how I should respond to that. But I said, Theo, I don't know what I can do to help you with your tax returns, but I'm here for you. What can I do? Why can't you do your tax returns? He said, well, they can't do my tax returns because I don't have any source document for all this money that we made. So what money, what are you talking about? He said, well, we did this Lafayette Courts job. We forgot to sign an agreement. We just shook hands and went on about doing a $52 million deal. We split it down the middle, but I don't have a source document that I can use for my tax returns. So 6 months after we finished a $52 million deal, Theo sent me an agreement, and I signed it and sent it back to him. And to me, that's the essence of a good relationship, that you innately know that the person with whom you're doing business is someone you can rely upon to work with you, to look at things squarely and fairly, and always take the longer term view. And I think that Theo believed that of us, and we certainly believed it of him. And to me, that's important. It's important in a lot of types of relationships.
Yeah, relationships are absolutely critical. Had an interesting start, and it's become a great relationship for you, but don't let Dick confuse you. I've been on an Ireland trip with Dick and Theo and sat in the back of the bus, listened to them talk politics, and I sat one row in front and listened. I didn't get involved, but still a lot of dialogue that goes on back and forth.
Well, Theo and I always had a lot of respect for one another. We didn't always agree with one another.
It's a great relationship. I know you guys golf a lot. And maybe I'll finish up the interview with the golf. Dick's an avid golfer, goes back to days at BCC as a caddy, and I've had the pleasure of going on trips with Dick to golf, and he's a very, very good golfer. He's a great partner to have. He takes pressure off lesser golfers like myself from that standpoint. But you do it well. How would you maybe tie in golf in the business world?
Well, first of all, I would tell you that we don't use it, or I don't use it, have never used it as a marketing tool. I do use it as a relationship tool. And Rick, as you well know, we've had some great experiences on the golf course together. And I think that's, one of the things about golf, and for people who really like golf, you can really enjoy being in each other's company on the golf course. And so I've used it in that respect in terms of having great experiences with people that we enjoy being with, especially our clients, but our existing clients. We haven't used it to try to attract new business. It's been, with long-term clients like Theo and Mark, and let's go have some fun. Let's take advantage of our relationship and go have some very interesting experiences. You also, golf is a challenging game, and you learn a little bit about people playing golf and how they handle the challenges. But it's mostly just a very positive, relationship reinforcing kind of an activity.
And it's also a four-letter word.
Oftentimes.
You talk about legend, and we'll stop at this and open it up for some questions. What I admire about Dick as well, he's just got a wonderful family. So Dick finds time to run a business, to pursue a passion like golf, to give back to the community, but very much involved with his family. I've been on golf trips and take a call from one of his kids. Leaves to go the other day to be at Freeman Hrabowski's speech at Centennial High School. So to me, when I look at legends, it's not just the success in the business, it's a 360-degree view. And you're too modest to say that, but I think you've accomplished all of those things. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you, Rick. I certainly understand that I have been very blessed. And, I would like to just acknowledge here tonight that there's a person here in the audience that has worked with me for, well, I'll get this wrong, but almost 30 years. And without whom I couldn't have accomplished half of what I have been able to. Someone who always knows the right thing, always knows where things are, how to get things done, and always does them with the highest level of competence. My executive assistant, Lisa Dawson.
Yeah, I know when I usually need something, I just go to Lisa,
So, I just would say that I know that I've been blessed. I was extremely fortunate to find Harkins, and I've been very fortunate. I've been blessed with my family and my children who make time for me and include me in their world, and so I'm appreciative and I enjoy it. We're in a really interesting business. We're always meeting in different people and we're engaged in different kinds of challenges every day. It's a fascinating and exciting business for me. So I just, I can't imagine. I'm just, knock on wood. I've been very, very blessed.
Yep. Any questions for Dick from the audience? Philip?
Dick, it's great to hear your story, and I've known your firm, of course, for the last 5 years, I think, right? And it's a privilege to get to know you. What, in today's market, from both an opportunity standpoint and from a challenge standpoint, what keeps you awake at night, if anything does still?
I've had that conversation with a number of people, and I'm one of the other things I'm pretty fortunate about is that no matter how challenging things get, I'm usually able to get a good night's sleep. But what I will say is that this is a particularly exciting time in our industry. We obviously went through a very difficult economic time frame from 2009. The next 3 or 4 years were really challenging, at least 3 or 4 years, and where there really wasn't much work available, and what was available was not usually work at which you could make the kind of margins we'd grown to somewhat expect from an historical perspective. Now the converse of that is, as we've been coming out of that period for the last couple of years at least, it's gotten to be much, much better for all of us in this industry in terms of the amount of work that's available and the margins, I think, for the most part, that we're able to obtain. But at the same time, resources start to become a little bit more scarce. And these, our business what we do takes time. We could be a year in pre-construction, and then maybe it's a 2-year project. Well, a lot can happen in 3 years, and when you think about price fluctuations and labor fluctuations, in a construction company, you can be having a really good year, but you're one bad job away from not having a good year. And so it's how do you stay on top of what you're doing, and who's doing it to have solid projects and to do what we're expected to do, to continue to do it well, to exceed the expectations that our clients have, and that everyone has. I mean, I think that whether it's clients, whether it's employees, whether it's subcontractors, successful companies exceed everyone's expectations. Yes, sir.
So Dick, Josh Beam, and I'm on the board here. I think we've dealt with each other several times in the past. But there are many construction companies who've made the decision to vertically integrate and do development as well. And others like you who sort of seem to have stuck to your moorings in construction only. I'm wondering what drove that decision and why?
I will tell you that for my entire career with Harkins, and I've been there now 40 years, we've always been that way.
Mine is 6 months.
Thank you, Rick. And even when we would do something that was quasi-development, for example, I mentioned that 600-unit project for the Navy. Excuse me?
That's what generated the question. So, yeah,
Well, it really isn't. It's not development in the true sense of the word. It's in response to a government-issued RFP. there's no market risk associated with it. And so it's much more of a contractor expertise with the right design than it is about understanding development and looking at market risks and things like that. But there's always been two reasons that started with Tom Harkins and Blaise Cook, and I support both of them. One is we're a contractor. We know construction, and we don't know development, and we want to stick to what we do know. And the other is we don't want to compete with our clients. And in effect, we feel like we would be competing with our clients if we were also developers. And there's a third reason: our surety hates it. But from a business philosophy perspective, that explains it. In my early days with the company, we had a development entity, but it was completely separate organizationally and corporately and financially, totally separate organizations.
I think maybe you have time for one more question in the back there.
I wonder if you have any reflections on just the difference for you on the business side from a single owner operated business to being an ESOP.
Well, I sure do, Willie, and I'll try to sort of condense this. As I mentioned earlier, and with great help from Rick, in 2001, Blaise Cook sold a majority interest of Harkins Builders to the employees, about 60% ownership by the employees. Blaise retained about 26%, and the executives got about 13%. At the time, Blaise appointed Gary Garofalo, Larry Kramer, and myself as trustees for the employees. So we were responsible for saying, yes, we'll buy your stock, or no, we won't buy your stock and we'll go look for another job. No, it really wasn't quite like that, but it was an important decision to make. And so one of the concerns that I had, that I felt the ESOP would help address, Harkins had long had a 401k program with a matching program. And I would sometimes talk to some of our older superintendents, and if I was talking to them about plumbing or carpentry or the schedule or whatever, they'd be all over it. They would just be back, it was their comfort zone. And then I'd say to them, so how are you doing with your 401k? And I'd get this deer in the headlight look. And I'd say, well, every dollar you put in there, we're going to put 50 cents on top of it. Where do you get? And I'd get this look like, and I just knew that we'd have people retiring from Harkins Builders, having spent 30, 40 years with the company, and they'd have a small amount in their 401k because we did a little bit of profit sharing, and they'd have Social Security. And the ESOP had presented the potential to make a substantial difference in that. The major effect that I think it's had, in addition to creating tremendous financial security, retirement security for hundreds of long-term employees over the course of time, it's changed the whole employee outlook. It's no longer we, they. Though, it's no longer those guys in the ivory tower. It's we. We are all employee owners. We all act like it. And when we have meetings, whatever someone's position might be, they understand that they're an owner and that they have as much right to challenge or question as anything else, and they care. I believe it's made a significant difference in the day-to-day approach of our employee owners. Kathy?
So students are attending University of Baltimore to gain knowledge. to ultimately get a job. In addition to gaining knowledge, students have to develop soft skills, communication, how to get along with others, work ethic. Could you speak to the students about what qualities do you have, the top qualities that have carried you through 40 years of success?
Sensitivity.
Okay.
Sorry. That's around Harkins. That's a pretty good inside joke.
I think I have tears.
You know, what I do think, one of the things that my first day at Harkins, I was convinced, before I got there, I was convinced that this was a job that I would not have for very long, and that I would be back out in business for myself, because I had this notion, this preconceived notion that Harkins was even then was kind of a bigger company, and bigger companies have rules and regulations, and you don't have freedom and the ability to use your brain and to make decisions and take risks. And when I started working, I was just amazed. It was exactly the opposite. It was the most entrepreneurial company I had ever been with, and they not only allowed, but they encouraged people to use their talents and to take on as much work as possible, to take risks. And when people made mistakes, as the one that I talked about, and there were certainly others, mistakes were never an issue for Mr. Harkins and Blaze. Mistakes come from people who are working really hard and who are making decisions every day. And the challenge is, can you learn from those mistakes? And so, what I would hope, is maybe a strength that I've been able to carry on from Mr. Harkins and from Blaze is an ability to encourage people to take on as much as they could take on, and then to challenge them. Why do you think that? What's the basis? Where are you going with this? Who's going to do this? When will that be done? And it's always sort of taking the approach of trying to get each individual involved to take ownership of what they're doing and make it happen. So I'm not sure if I expressed that clearly. I'd prefer to lead people to whatever makes the most sense, is the best decision, without telling them, without saying, well, do it this way. When someone says, I'm going to do it this way for this reason, and this is when I'm going to do it, wow, great. I'll check in on you next week and see how it's going. That's far better than, you need to do this, I want you to do it on Thursday, and that's just, in my opinion, not a very effective way to manage.
So thank you very much. We started tonight trying to define what a legend is. I've known Dick from a business perspective, and now as a friendship that I hold very, very dear. Hopefully tonight you walk out knowing the true definition of a legend, an important person who is known for doing something extremely well. Hopefully that was conveyed tonight.
Well, Rick, thank you so much. And
Thank you very much for joining us in this year's Lessons from Legends.
Thank you, and thank you to all of my friends and in the industry who supported this program financially tonight. Certainly appreciate that, and I'm sure that the university does as well.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We'll see you at next year's Lessons from Legends.